Victoria, darling, going to bed now. Need anything? No, my love. Good night. 6 months ago, Victoria's life changed forever. An accident left her blind and paralyzed. At least that's what everyone believes. But in a house full of secrets, sometimes the person who can't see sees everything. 8 months earlier, Victoria Cole was on top of the world. She had built a tech startup from nothing, sold it for 200 million naira, and married a man she believed was her equal. Marcos was handsome, charming, and attentive, everything she had hoped for in a partner. But 3 years into their marriage, things began to change. Marcos started coming home late. Business dinners, he would say. Important clients. Victoria began to notice the perfume on his clothes, the way he guarded his phone, and the hushed conversations that stopped the moment she walked into the room. She told herself she was just being paranoid. Maybe she was overthinking. Until the day she came home early from a business trip. As she stepped inside the house, she heard sounds coming from upstairs, from their bedroom. Slowly, she walked up the stairs and opened the door. Marcos was in bed with her personal assistant. Victoria didn't scream. She didn't cry. She didn't cause a scene. Instead, she quietly closed the door, walked downstairs, and sat in the living room thinking. She could divorce him. Walk away. Start over. But Victoria wanted answers. Real answers. How long had this been happening? How many women were there? Did Marcos ever truly love her? Or had it always been about her money? She needed proof. Complete and undeniable proof. And she knew exactly how to get it. 2 weeks later, Victoria staged a car accident. Everything about it was carefully planned. A quiet road. The right time of day. She hired professionals who owed her favors. The crash looked real. The damage was convincing. When paramedics arrived, Victoria was unconscious. Marcos received the call while he was at the office. By the time he rushed to the hospital, the doctors were delivering devastating news. Victoria had suffered a traumatic brain injury. She had completely lost her vision. And she was paralyzed from the waist down. She would never see again. She would never walk again. She would need constant care. Marcos's face showed all the expected emotions: shock, sadness, and concern. But Victoria, lying silently in the hospital bed with her eyes closed, heard something else in his voice when he spoke to the doctor. Relief. 2 days later, Marcos brought Victoria home in a wheelchair. Dark sunglasses covered her eyes, and her voice sounded weak and defeated. "Thank you for taking care of me," she whispered. "I don't know what I'll do without you." Marcos squeezed her hand. "I'll always be here," he promised. But that very night, after placing Victoria near the window in her wheelchair, Marcos went upstairs and made a phone call. Victoria couldn't see him, but she could hear perfectly. "She's completely blind," Marcos said. "The doctors confirmed it. Yes, she's paralyzed too. This changes everything." During the first week, Marcos acted like the perfect caretaker, attentive, patient, and helpful. But in the second week, a woman came to the house. "She's here to help take care of you," Marcos explained. Later that day, Victoria heard them kissing in the hallway. "Is she really blind?" the woman whispered. "Yes," Marcos replied confidently. By the third week, Marcos began bringing women home during the day. They would walk right past Victoria sitting silently in her wheelchair, completely ignoring her presence, like she was just a piece of furniture. Insignificant. Invisible. Victoria sat through it all without moving. Without speaking. Playing her role perfectly. But the truth was, she wasn't helpless. Long before the accident, Victoria had installed cameras throughout the house. Hidden. Sophisticated. Recording everything. Every night when Marcos believed she was asleep, Victoria was documenting everything. Voice-activated recorders captured every conversation. Her phone logged every detail. Dates, times, names, and evidence. By the second month, Victoria discovered something even worse than the affairs. Marcos had begun working with lawyers to gain power of attorney over her finances. Since she was now unable to manage her business affairs, he was positioning himself to take control of everything. Her money, her assets, her entire empire. And one day, Victoria heard him reveal the final part of his plan to one of his mistresses. "Once the paperwork goes through," Marcos said calmly, "we'll put her in a facility. Some quiet place where she'll be taken care of. Then we'll finally be free." Victoria sat silently in her wheelchair as those words echoed through the house. Her own husband had just calmly planned her future, as if she were nothing more than a burden. Not a wife. Not a partner. Just a problem that needed to disappear. But Victoria didn't react. She didn't move. She simply listened, and continued collecting evidence. Every conversation. Every betrayal. Every lie. She was building a case so strong that when the truth finally came out, there would be no escape. Then month 4 arrived. And with it, a betrayal Victoria never expected. One afternoon, the front door opened. A woman walked into the house and headed straight toward the kitchen. Victoria immediately recognized the perfume. Then she heard the voice. Her stomach twisted. Jennifer. Her own sister. Victoria's fingers tightened around the arms of her wheelchair until her knuckles turned white. But her face remained perfectly calm behind those dark sunglasses. She listened carefully. "When are you leaving her?" Jennifer asked. Marcos sighed. "Soon. I'm almost done with the financial paperwork." Jennifer's voice lowered. "And everything will be ours?" "Yes," Marcos said confidently. "And what about her?" There was a short pause. Then Marcos replied casually. "A care facility. Somewhere quiet. She'll never know the difference." Jennifer laughed. Then a moment later, they kissed. Victoria sat frozen as the sound echoed through the hallway. A few seconds later, their footsteps moved upstairs. To her bedroom. One tear slowly rolled down Victoria's cheek. But it wasn't sadness. It was rage. That night, Victoria made a call. "Jessica. It's time." On the other end of the line, her best friend took a breath. She had been waiting months for those words. "You're sure?" Jessica asked. Victoria's voice was calm. "I've never been more sure of anything." The next day, Victoria surprised Marcos with an idea. She wanted to throw a party. A celebration of survival. A way to thank everyone who had supported her during the past 6 months. Marcos loved the idea immediately. "I'll invite everyone," he said excitedly. And he meant everyone. Family. Friends. Business partners. Even the women he had been secretly bringing into the house. Because in his mind, Victoria would never know. By the night of the party, the mansion was glowing with music, lights, and laughter. More than 100 guests filled the house. Champagne glasses clinked. People chatted and admired the beautiful decorations. In the center of the room sat Victoria. In her wheelchair. Dark sunglasses covering her eyes. Smiling politely as she greeted guests. Marcos stood beside her, playing the role of the perfect husband. Jennifer played the loving sister. And scattered around the room, several women exchanged quiet, knowing looks. At exactly 9 o'clock, Victoria gently raised her hand. "May I have everyone's attention?" The room slowly fell silent. Guests gathered around her. Victoria smiled softly. "Thank you all for coming tonight," she began. "These past 6 months have changed my life. I've learned a lot about the people around me." Many guests smiled, expecting an emotional speech about strength and gratitude. But then Victoria continued. "I've learned who truly cares about me." Her voice paused. "And who has been lying to me." The atmosphere shifted instantly. Marcos's smile began to fade. Then Victoria said something unexpected. "But there's something else. I haven't been completely honest with you either. Marcos looked confused. Victoria slowly gripped the arms of her wheelchair. Then suddenly, she stood up. Gasps filled the entire room. Chairs scraped across the floor. People stared in disbelief. Victoria calmly removed her sunglasses. Her eyes were clear, sharp, focused. I'm not paralyzed, she said. And I've never been blind. Silence spread across the mansion like a shockwave. For 6 months, Victoria continued, I pretended to be helpless. To see what my husband would do when he believed I couldn't see him, couldn't stop him, couldn't fight back. Then she pulled a small remote from her pocket and pressed a button. Every television screen in the mansion turned on at once. Security footage began playing. Marcos with a blonde woman in their bedroom. Another clip. Marcos with a brunette in the living room. Another. Marcos kissing a redhead in the kitchen. Then the final video appeared. Marcos and Jennifer together in Victoria's bed. A recording played through the speakers. When are you leaving her? Soon. I'm almost done with the financial paperwork. And what about her? A care facility. She'll never know the difference. The room was completely silent. Some guests covered their mouths. Others stared at Marcos in horror. Victoria slowly turned toward him. You thought I was helpless. You thought I was trapped. You thought I depended on you. Marcos opened his mouth, but no words came out. Victoria continued. But I saw everything. I heard everything. And I recorded everything. At that moment, her lawyer stepped forward. He handed Marcos a thick envelope. Inside were divorce papers, a restraining order, and criminal charges for fraud and financial manipulation, all supported by 6 months of undeniable evidence. Then Victoria turned toward Jennifer. You're no longer part of my family. You're removed from my will, and from my life. Finally, Victoria looked back at the guests. Now you all know the truth. The man I married never loved me. He loved my money. And when I became inconvenient, he planned to lock me away and take everything. She paused, then looked directly at Marcos. But I wasn't blind. And now, neither is anyone else. With that, Victoria calmly walked out of the mansion, leaving Marcos standing alone, exposed, humiliated, and completely destroyed. 3 months later, the divorce was finalized. Marcos received nothing. The prenuptial agreement was ironclad. He also faced criminal charges for attempted financial fraud. Jennifer was disowned by the entire family. And Victoria, she kept everything. Her story soon spread across the world. The woman who pretended to be blind, to reveal the truth. She later wrote a best-selling book and created a foundation to help women escape financial abuse. 1 year later, during a charity gala, a man approached her. Miss Cole, I'm David. What you did was incredibly brave. Victoria smiled politely. Thank you. David hesitated for a moment. Would you like to have coffee sometime? I promise. I'm not after your money. Victoria laughed softly. How can I be sure? David smiled. You can't. But I'm willing to earn your trust. Victoria thought for a moment, then nodded. Coffee, she said. Just coffee. We'll see. For the first time in years, Victoria felt hopeful again. But this time, she would keep her eyes wide open, because she had learned a powerful truth. When people believe you cannot see them, they reveal who they truly are. And sometimes, the strongest revenge isn't anger. It's simply exposing the truth. Victoria pretended to be blind, but she saw everything. And when she finally opened her eyes, the entire world saw the truth too. The end.